Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
What would you do if your wife suddenly changed her behavior and became more secretive towards you? Let's hear the following story about it. Sometimes I would look at the picture on my desk of me and my wife on our first date and remember how we met. We met by chance in a sanatorium in line for a free lunch. I accidentally almost knocked the tray from her hands. My apology. She was so embarrassed, lowered her eyes, and then raised them, and I just sank into those blue lakes. We began to meet. On our first date, I invited her to the shore of the lake where we vacationed there and decided to capture the beginning of our life together. Soon we were married. I was the chief engineer at our facility and helped get Maggie a job in our lab since she had graduated from university and was a very talented chemist. We also decided to take out a mortgage on the house, which we'd been choosing for over a month to make our little nest egg. Although the mortgage was in my wife's name, since I already had a car loan, it was just a formality because we looked at our family as a whole. We have not had children yet, but plan to do so in the near future. It was necessary to start to stand on their feet confidently. Meanwhile, in her spare time, she liked to spend at the shelter for animals and help there. I sometimes went on business trips to other cities and liked to bring her from there a variety of knickknacks, which she heartily rejoiced. 10 years of our life together flew by. As usual, I returned from another business trip and brought her a small box with a carved wooden lid. She loved it. "You always find something original." She complimented me in gratitude and pecked me on the cheek. "How are you doing at the shelter? I see you've just come from there." "Yeah. They brought in some homeless puppies today. Their mom got hit by a car and people brought them in so they wouldn't starve to death." "You're so good to animals. You should have been a vet." "I don't think so. I couldn't do everything a doctor does." "How did you do? How was your trip?" "It was okay. The meeting with the investors went well. We signed an agreement. Now we're going to start a new batch of our drugs." We finished the evening with dinner, which Maggie cooked almost immediately. I was satisfied with her culinary skills. The next day, there was a surprise waiting for me at home. When I came home from work, I noticed a soft whimpering in the living room. I walked in and saw a little puppy sitting on the couch on the mat. Immediately, Maggie appeared on the doorstep too. "I hope you don't mind. He's so cute." She took him in her arms and rubbed his nose. Of course, I didn't mind. I loved animals too, though not as much as Maggie. But indulging her desire was nice for me. The puppy continued to live with us. My wife named him Max. He was spoiled a little. He would pee on the furniture. He'd chew on my slippers. But Maggie was carefully engaged in his education, and very soon Max was becoming more well-behaved and trained. After a few weeks, I noticed that Maggie began to distance herself from me. I thought at first that her love was being poached by a puppy, but she was spending time with him as usual, taking him for walks and to the shelter with her. But it was at the shelter that she started spending more time than usual. Oh, there was more work to be done. One girl left, and now her job has been passed on to all of us. She explained to me. I willingly believed it, but soon she started paying less and less attention to me. She stopped fulfilling her marital duties. She was tired or had a headache or needed to take Max for a walk. But I'm no stranger to her either. I decided to give it some time. Shortly after work, a colleague invited me to have a mug of beer with him. He had a fight with his girlfriend, and I agreed to support him in a friendly conversation. We went into a little bar we sometimes went to. We stayed there for a while he shared his sorrows. I occasionally looked around, and for a moment I thought I saw Maggie and a man I didn't know coming out of the place. I wanted to follow them, but my colleague started to ask me for advice, and thinking I was imagining things, I turned back to him. At home, I asked Maggie how she was spending her time today and where she was. She replied that she had stopped by the shelter for a while after work as usual and had been home all evening afterward. I had no reason not to believe her. But a couple of days later, an envelope was sent to me at work, anonymously. I wondered what it could be, so I put the other envelopes aside and opened the one without a return address. There were a couple of photos. I got them out the back first, and I turned them over with curiosity. There were pictures of Maggie with another man, some of them just walking somewhere together, and some of them kissing. These photos were shocking in a concrete way. Enclosed in the envelope was a note: "Your wife is cheating on you. A do-gooder." I put the photo on the table and leaned back in my chair, wondering how that was possible. I wondered if Maggie was really cheating on me, but I hadn't given her any reason to. We were doing great in our relationship. Even though I looked at the pictures as proof, I still didn't believe it. I had a friend I knew at the police department, so I decided to take the photo to him for verification. After a while, he called me. I have to disappoint you. The photos are real. And who sent them is impossible to find out. There are no prints or clues. They were printed in one of the kiosks, and the photographer could not remember who made the order. And there are no cameras, unfortunately. All he said was that it was some typical-looking man. I listened to him carefully, and now my life took on a whole new dimension. I didn't wait until the end of the day and decided to talk to Maggie right away. I went down to her lab and asked the assistant to step outside. Maggie, how can you explain this to me? I tossed an envelope on the table as we sat down at her desk. She took her time opening the envelope. I noticed her eyes go wide with surprise and her face take on a pale hue. Anthony, this is some kind of joke, she said confusedly. What is it? You tell me what it is. The pictures are real. I checked. I thought at first that someone was joking too, but it did look like that. I stared at her with a stare that made her feel even more uncomfortable. Maggie never could give me a logical explanation as to what the picture was. She swore it wasn't her. She didn't recognize the man in the picture either. In all the years we had lived together, she had never once given me a reason to doubt her fidelity, and I needed to make the right decision in this situation. After leaving her photo, I went back to my office. For a moment, I wanted to believe that this was really someone else's ridiculous joke. But who needed it? I couldn't leave it at that, so after a brief moment's thought, I called a friend from the police to ask him to follow my wife around for a while. At home, Maggie greeted me with a scandal. She came at me with questions about the show, the picture, and how I could doubt her. I could not stand it and fought with her. It was the first major scandal in our family in years. I ended up leaving the house, slamming the door, and going for a wander outside to calm down a bit. I came back when Maggie was already asleep. I sat down on the couch in the living room and looked at the pictures again. I woke up in the morning on the same couch. Unnoticed to myself, I had fallen asleep there yesterday. I noticed that Maggie was already packed, and not just packed, she was heading for the exit with her suitcase and her puppy on a leash. Where are you going? I was a little confused as to what was going on. Where to? Far away from here. I'm staying with a friend. I can't stand the fact that you believe some pictures and not me. Wait a minute. What are you thinking? What friend? But she didn't say anything specific and walked on toward the exit. I jumped up and quickly walked up to her, taking her hand. Let me go, you're hurting me, she cried out. You're not going anywhere. What kind of fantasy is that? Or is there someone else? Are you going to see him? Yes? Maggie freaked out and pushed the suitcase away. You're just a lunatic, she grumbled and walked out the door. Max needs a walk, she said one last time. I didn't see that coming. I called my cop friend at work to see if he could find out anything. Tom didn't give me any concrete results yet, but he did say that they had seen Maggie get very close to the vet at the shelter she sometimes visited. My suspicions from this information only increased. I decided to talk to her again at the lab, but the security guard at the entrance reported that Maggie had not shown up for work today. I dialed her phone number, but it was disconnected. This situation worried me greatly. I asked my supervisor to leave and went home. My mind was filled with all kinds of thoughts, including the possibility that something might have happened to her. But it looked like Maggie herself was perfectly fine. I didn't find her at home or her suitcase of belongings. Remembering Tom's words about the vet, I immediately rushed to him. When I arrived, I was met at the gate by the guard on duty with a huge sheepdog. He asked what purpose I had come for. I answered that I wanted to buy a puppy. He believed me and let me in without hesitation. It was noticeably clean inside, but the walls were stinky with animals and the smell was not quite pleasant for me from the street. But that soon passed. I wandered down the corridor, asking one of the workers where to find who I needed. Pretty soon I was in his office. Without knocking, I opened the door abruptly. There sat a rather tall and muscular man, his long hair slung over his shoulders, and I noticed his glasses and beard, from which I recognized him as the man in the photographs. I am listening to you attentively. He looked up at me. I have come to talk about Maggie. About my wife. Oh, Maggie? Yes, she said you might show up. Have a seat. But I didn't feel like making a nice conversation with him. I came closer and bent over the table. Do you have something with her? Answer me. Charles, that was the vet's name, got up from the table, and I noticed that he was clearly taller than I was. He came over and looked me in the face. Yeah, Maggie and I are dating. She's a pretty nice girl. I wanted to punch him, but he skillfully intercepted my punch. Whoa, 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 whoa. This isn't the gym for you. I'd advise you to get out of here and out of Maggie's life, too. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. My next attempts to talk to him went nowhere. He easily twisted my arm behind my back and led me out of the building. There was nothing more I could do in this position. When I returned to work, I asked if Maggie had shown up for work. Having again received a negative answer, I tried to call her again, but to no avail. A few hours later, Tom called me and gave me the sad news that he had seen Maggie go into the vet's house with her belongings. He also confirmed that he had seen them in a rather intimate relationship. Looks like Maggie left me after all. But why didn't she just talk to me? I was filled with resentment and anger. It was as if I'd been used and then just thrown away. Not wanting to leave it like that, I called another friend of mine and suggested we meet. I came up with a plan to get my wife home. In the evening, Greg came to my house. I opened a can of beer for us and began to tell my story. He listened attentively and sympathetically suggested a few options. But none of the suggestions satisfied me, so I voiced my plan. A few days passed and I continued my work. One day, the security guard at the entrance called me on the internal phone and informed me that I had a visitor. When he described his appearance, I realized who it was and asked to be let through. At the same time, I also asked him to be somewhere nearby, just in case. Soon the door of my office opened and Charles crossed the threshold. He came in with a disgruntled expression on his face and without saying hello immediately sat down in the chair in front of me. "What do you want?" I asked. "I came to talk. You can take your wife. I don't need her anymore. But answer me another question. My orphanage was recently inspected. You don't know anything about that?" "How would I know? You made it clear to me that I'm not allowed in there." I knew what he was talking about, but I couldn't show him my cards. "And tonight, someone broke in and let all the animals out and now they're running all over town. Have you come to ask for help catching them?" I sneered. "Don't pretend you don't know. I know you had something to do with it. You're getting revenge on your wife, aren't you? Well, you did it, but don't think I'm going to let it go." He got up from his chair and was about to leave. "By the way, I sent you those pictures of me and Maggie." I continued to stare at him indifferently until he left the office. I was glad that he didn't start a fight here, though I was ready for that. I was glad that my request had been complied with, and now, thanks to an unscheduled inspection by the commission, which allegedly found a dangerous virus as well as several animals in cages in the basement that were allegedly being experimented on, Charles's shelter would be closed and he would lose his veterinary license. In addition, he is still awaiting police questioning. I smiled as he closed the door on the other side and called a friend to thank him. When I returned home, I found the familiar leash hanging on the coat rack, and soon the dog himself came running up to me to say hello. I scratched his withers and went into the house. I found Maggie crying in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table, covering her face with her hands. "Oh, what people? Is the prodigal wife back? Did you have a good time?" I started the conversation in a sassy tone. After what she had done, my feelings for her had faded. I no longer felt the same tenderness for her as I had before, for she had betrayed me so much. But Maggie didn't answer my questions, only mumbled something about a tube of cream she had recently bought. I couldn't make out her mumbling, so I sat down next to her. "Maggie, now you'll never cheat on me again." I took her hand and yanked it away from her face. For a moment I was even creeped out. Instead of her beautiful face, I was now looking at a disfigured, pockmarked face. I soon divorced her, leaving her without a beauty but with a mortgage. Well, our protagonist's situation is really not good, but I would do the same thing if I were him. What about you? We're waiting for your answer in the comments. Thank you for listening to this story. Now here is another exciting story for you to read. As a child, I loved to watch programs in which they told and showed the most different parts of our world. I have always wanted to visit these amazing places myself. But I could not even imagine that this would be possible thanks to my work. I was the captain on a huge tourist liner. This huge ship made a huge route across the ocean. We have been to many different places. I really liked my work. I was proud to be piloting a huge ship. Early in my career, I met Susan. It was a wonderful evening. Friends dragged me to a loud party in a nightclub. It was beautiful here, but I was not a strong fan of such entertainment. Friends actively had fun, danced, but I enjoyed whiskey at the table and watched them dance. Suddenly, slow romantic music began to play and all the people split into pairs. A sweet and slender brown-haired woman with an incredibly beautiful smile approached me. "Young man, would you like to invite a lady to dance?" The girl asked playfully. "Yes, of course, with great pleasure," I said in confusion, and we began to circle in a dance. "I watched you. You sit at the table all evening. Don't you really want to dance?" The girl asked. "To be honest, I'm not a dancer," I answered timidly. "Why did you come here then?" "Friends invited me. They love such noisy parties." "And what do you like exactly?" "I prefer quiet rest, walks in the fresh air." "I also like this kind of rest. Maybe we can take a walk then? I see that you are not very comfortable here." "I'll be glad," I answered. "My name is Susan. What is your name?" "My name is Christopher." "Nice to meet you, Christopher. I hope I did not embarrass you too much by deciding to get to know each other?" "Of course not. I am extremely glad that I met you. I am very pleased with your company." We went outside. It was very cold. Susan was in a light evening dress with bare shoulders. I immediately threw my jacket over her shoulders. We walked along the promenade, enjoying the fresh air and silence. At this time, the embankment was already empty. There were only solitary street lamps along the embankment. Susan was pretty nice. I had fun with her. I will remember this evening for the rest of my life. We agreed to meet again, and our communication continued. Time flies quickly, and before I could look back, 18 years had passed in my marriage to Susan. It was a fun romantic time. Of course, I had to leave for long flights on the ship, but when I returned, all the days with Susan were special. Susan didn't have to work. She took care of the house while I made money. I received a decent income. I even bought a small summer house on the shore of a beautiful large lake. It was our favorite place where we hid from the bustle of the city. I absolutely loved spending time here with Susan. We bought groceries for a week and came here to enjoy the sunrises and sunsets. Everything was great. Once I returned from a flight, my wife greeted me with a warm welcome. It was, as always, very pleasant to return home to my beloved wife. At home it was good. I could finally relax completely. On one of my free days, I decided to clean up my garage. I decided to clean the interior of the car. While cleaning the interior, I suddenly saw something glittering under the seat. I reached out and took out my wristwatch. I looked at this watch. It was engraved, "To Michael with love." This discovery made me very worried. What the hell was this watch doing in my car? "Susan, honey, is there anything you want to tell me?" I asked anxiously when I returned to the house. "No, honey, what happened?" "I found this watch in my car. They are clearly not mine." "What do you say to that?" I said, putting this watch on the table. "Honey, I have no idea where they came from and whose they are." Susan replied in fear. "Are you sure about that? The clock itself could not come, open the car door, and lie under the seat." "Darling, I'm just as surprised as you. I have no idea where this watch came from. Honestly." Susan's answer frankly confused me. She seemed to be missing something. There was a hint of nervousness in her voice. The question took her by surprise. She seemed to be trying to change the topic of conversation, hiding her eyes shyly. But I realized that Susan wasn't going to tell me anything. My thoughts began to become unpleasant. Suspicions arose. These hours gave me no rest. I posted an ad on a lost and found site, and soon I got a call from a guy who identified himself as the owner of this watch. I met this guy. He was much younger than me. "Hey, are you Michael?" I asked when I met the guy. "Yes, that's right, and you are Christopher?" asked guy in the answer. "Yes, it's me. Is this really your watch?" "Yes, as proof, I can say that there is a zigzag scratch on the side. Look." "Yes, you are right. There is such a scratch. They are truly yours." "Okay, now Michael, tell me what the hell your watch was doing in my car?" "To be honest, I don't know how you got them." Confused, the guy answered. "You don't know exactly?" "Yes, I have no idea what my watch was doing in your car." "Listen to me here." "What are you telling me here? Are you doing something to my wife?" "Speak quickly." I grabbed the guy by the collar and pinned him against the wall. "Man, calm down. What are you doing? Let me go." The guy tried to get out. Know her? I took a picture of Susan from my back pocket and showed it to the guy. I got it. Yes, I know this woman. Let me explain everything. I work in a car repair shop. Your wife recently contacted me. She asked to urgently fix the car. There were problems with the electronics. Here I was digging in the cabin in a hurry and probably dropped the clock. So you are a mechanic? Yes, my wife gave me this watch. She would have killed me if I had not found it. You can ask your wife all this. If necessary, contact my service. The data on payment for services is stored there. I understand, okay, guy, I'm sorry for being so rude. Keep watch, I said and gave the guy a watch. I came home and started talking to Susan. Susan, why the hell didn't you tell me you took my car in for repairs? How do you know? I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I know how much you love your car. And I didn't want to hear from you again that I don't drive it carefully. So I decided to quickly fix it before you returned from the flight. Honey, it would be better if you said right away. This watch I found in the car belonged to an auto mechanic who was fixing the car. I found him and almost killed him. Darling, are you jealous of me? Susan asked with a sly smile. Of course, I'm jealous and worried. You didn't tell me anything, so I had bad thoughts. Do not do it anymore. Well, dear, don't worry. I only love you and I don't need anyone else in the whole world. After talking with Susan, I calmed down. Everything turned out and I was immensely glad that Susan did not cheat on me. Soon I had to go on a new flight again. Me definitely don't need bad thoughts. And with peace of mind, I went on a flight. We moored in one of the ports. The tourists went down from the ship to look around. I decided to check my email. Suddenly I saw a letter from my friend, Stephen. He wrote that he could not get through to me. She wanted to see me. A connection was already available here and I called Stephen. Stephen, hi. What did you call? I'm on a flight. I told you about it. Christopher, hi. Yes, I once drove near your country house on the lake. Someone was there. And I know there shouldn't be anyone but you and Susan. I thought you had a flight canceled, so I decided to call you. I thought you were here and we could meet. No, Stephen, I'm on a flight. And who was there? Didn't you come in? No, Christopher. I know that this is your favorite place for solitude. Why do you need unexpected guests? I was thinking of meeting you later. You puzzled me, Stephen. Surely you didn't notice anything like that? Well, there was a black Volkswagen. Of course, I didn't see such a car with you, but maybe you bought another car, so you didn't attach any importance. But wait, there was an interesting number, 2 6s and 2 7s. Stephen tensed up and remembered the full number of the car along with additional letters. This information was very useful to me. My condition was terrible. I was far from home and could not check who was in this house. At the first opportunity, I phoned Susan and decided to gently ask if she was in our country house. And to my great surprise, she replied that she was at home all the time and did not go there. At this point, my thoughts became even darker. Only Susan had the keys. No one else could get in there. Unless some impudent freak decided to take care of it while I was gone. All these thoughts drove me crazy. I was looking forward to the end of the flight in order to sort everything out. And finally, I returned home. It was the hardest flight of my life. First of all, I turned to my old acquaintance, Jack, who worked in the police. Before, we often helped each other out, and this time he also helped me out. By the number of the car, I found out who was the owner. It was a certain Edward Slim. It was a well-known wholesaler who received a large amount of goods in the port. But what the hell was his car doing near my country house? I decided to dig up more information about this guy. Through my connections, I found one secretive company that is engaged in surveillance, extracting all the necessary information about any person. At least my friends told me so. I was not sure about this step, but I did not think to retreat. A month later, I received information and realized that the guys knowingly take a solid amount of money for their work. They provided everything from this bastard's daily routine to all his operations at work. This bastard bought cheap Chinese goods. He sold some of them between small shops, and he passed off some of them as quality certified goods of famous brands. He forged documents and secretly supplied certain stores with this low-quality equipment, making huge illegal profits. It became clear that it was a rare bastard. I have a plan ripened how to test the fidelity of my wife. My flight was delayed for a few weeks, but I didn't tell my wife about it. I, as always, packed all my things for the flight, said goodbye to my wife, and left home. To avoid suspicion, I did not take my car, but rented an inconspicuous car. I stopped in an inconspicuous place near my house. From here, I had a great view of the entrance to my house. It was an exhausting wait of several days. I ate and slept right in the car. I was afraid to miss Susan. She went to the grocery store and spent most of her time at home. When I left nearby to relieve myself, I was deathly afraid that Susan might have left the house at that moment. But a few days later, I noticed how Susan quickly left the house and went to the park, which was nearby. She walked across the square and approached a car. I looked closely. It was the same car that my friend saw near the country house. I followed this car. Anger boiled inside me. My common sense could no longer justify everything that was happening now. And then we drove right up to our country house. Those bastards got out of the car and headed inside the house. I sat in the car for a while, thinking about what to do next. But then I abruptly discarded all thoughts and decided to just break into the house. The door to the house was locked, but I had the keys and went inside. There was no one in the hall. And then I heard the soft creaking of the bed in our bedroom. I burst into the bedroom and saw my naked wife sitting on top of this bastard and riding on his penis. "Oh, you shameless scum!" I shouted, ran up and dragged Susan to the floor by her hair. This bastard jumped up and wanted to pounce on me, but I was more agile and nothing could stop my anger. I hit the bastard in the face with all my might, and then he grabbed a chair and smashed it on his back. "Get it, bitch. Now you will find out what happens to those who fuck other people's wives." "Man, wait, don't. Calm down, let's talk. We can solve everything," frightened yelled Edward. "Shut up," I shouted and kicked the bastard in the jaw. "Do you even know who I am?" "Yes, you're covered, even if you're her husband." Spitting out teeth with blood began to threaten Edward. "What? Are you still going to threaten me? Who told you that you would live to see the evening?" I said and punched Edward in the chest again. Edward lay on the floor covered in blood and coughing. "Well, bitch, how could you? This was our place with you." "I'm sorry, Christopher, I'm sorry." Susan howled in tears. "No, bastards, I'm not going to forgive this," I said and tightly tied the legs of both. Then I ran out into the street, grabbed a cable that lay in a moored boat near the house. I tied one end to the boat and the other end I tied to the feet of those bastards. "Now let's ride," I shouted and started the engine in my boat. I yanked these bastards right out of the house, stretched it across the yard and pulled it into the water, then I revved up and accelerated. These bastards began to be beaten by the waves. They choked with water. Of course, I didn't intend to drown them and I didn't think to beat off their kidneys either. Therefore, this walk was not too long. I abruptly turned the boat around and these exhausted bastards flew naked to the shore. "Well, bitches, you will know how to lead me by the nose. You, Susan, will return to your miserable life. Now you yourself will try to work. So from now on your life will change dramatically. Better not come home, otherwise I will burn you along with all your things. And you bastard still know what I'm capable of." I shouted, cut the rope and sailed away on the boat towards the house. For some reason, I didn't feel sad. Lucky revenge and a fresh breeze from the waves that my boat was breaking gave me confidence in my happy future without a lying bitch who looked into my eyes and swore in love. I handed over all the dirt that I found to my friend from the police. This also helped him get a new rank as a major criminal scheme was uncovered. Edward was put in jail for a long time, and I divorced Susan, leaving her nothing. She was left with a bare ass. I sold the country house. It no longer brought me joy, but only reminded me of treason and meanness. With the proceeds, I bought myself a luxurious sports car, in which I now often like to race towards the horizon, towards a new happy life. What do you think of this story? Would you do the same, or could you let it go? Dear viewers, thank you for staying with us and supporting our channel. See you again.